If you're driving around North Carolina or Georgia these days, you might be passing some pretty distracting billboards. Someone is putting up billboards with a picture of Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. Also, what's QAnon been up to lately, and are these billboards somehow related to them? First, let's talk about the billboards. At first glance, it's reasonable to presume that whoever is putting them up just wants to remind people that the man that they may be about to vote for, likely for a third time, this November has ties to the now deceased notorious sex trafficker. And for people who proclaim to want to protect the children, MAGA Republicans don't seem bothered by the fact that their preferred presidential candidate has deep ties to someone who is known for preying on young people. So by now, there are over 30 of these billboards throughout Georgia and North Carolina. Some people find them highly amusing, others not so much. And the billboards are mainly just the picture of the two guys. There's no campaign message, there's no anti-sex trafficking message. In the corner, it just says, paid for by Protect Children Q, LLC. How mysterious. Naturally, people are wondering who put these billboards up and who is behind this mysterious LLC. And it is mysterious. If you Google it, you get nothing. Just a bunch of other people wondering who they are. It's entirely anonymous, both in terms of who the group is and who is funding them. Is it the pro-Biden Democrats? Is it the anti-Trump Republicans? Is it an actual child advocacy group? Or is it part of an actual anti-sex trafficking campaign? Of course, others are wondering if the Q at the end of the Protect Children Q LLC suggests a link to QAnon. However, that wouldn't make much sense because QAnon is usually pro-Republican and pro-Trump. So some of the more conspiratorial folks are thinking maybe Q flipped. Or maybe anti-QAnon people are trying to commandeer the Q moniker for their own anti-Q messaging.
Q didn't ever really intend to make any true predictions about arrests with predictions of dates and times. That was all disinformation and distraction.
These are things you need to think about, it seems, even though honestly, it doesn't matter. The picture is there. We've all seen it. It exists. Do what you want with it, voters of America. But the voters of America are lost. And speaking of QAnon, I thought it'd be fun to check in with these particular voters. Right now, it seems as though they are not so much worried about billboards as they are freaking out about the upcoming solar eclipse in April. Apart from resetting the world order and kicking off World War III, it's apparently fulfilling a biblical prophecy.
The shocking part is this eclipse is going to be passing through 8 towns called Nineveh, which is the city recorded in the Bible where the prophet Jonah warned them about the wrath of God to come. This will also be taking place under the constellation Cetus, which means the whale. As many of you know, the prophet Jonah was swallowed by a whale before being spit onto the shore to go preach repentance to Nineveh.
Apparently, this eclipse is biblical because it is the sign of Jonah from the Bible, because it goes across a town named Jonah and across several towns named Nineveh. Solid. There's a bunch more equally convincing evidence that this particular solar eclipse will foster the second coming of Christ. The comment sections in these videos is full of people doing very strange math to further convince themselves that this is indeed the time of Christ. And one commenter even cited, quote, all of the sicknesses and all of the challenges as his reasoning behind why Christ is coming. Also, what does the United States have to do with the Bible, you might be wondering? Why would an eclipse crossing the US be part of a biblical prophecy? Well, according to one YouTuber, the occultists who are having meetings with Satan believe that the US is actually Mystery Babylon. And since their intel is coming straight from Satan, they must know what they're talking about. That's a real video.
Homeland Security, the National Guard's out over Texas when this happens coming up next month, and it's the end of the world and all this fear. It's all a psychological manipulation. John Bound's report is very important. I'll be getting into it later. It's up on Infowars.com. We're going to post it right now on X. Solar Eclipse 2024, National Guard could be brought in as huge crowds expected to gather. April 8th solar eclipse could impact power. Here's why. And it goes right over Austin, right over Waco, right over Tyler, right over Texarkana, because that's how the shadow gets cast. It doesn't do it everywhere. And there's solar eclipses going on the planet every week in different places. But they treat us like a bunch of ignorant savages and are hyping all this up, and God knows what the globalists are going to pull because they made major major preparations for this.
Over on the subreddit QAnon Casualties, one user states that the Q follower in their life believes that the eclipse will knock out all of the power and, yes, foster the second coming of Christ. Not only that, but the eclipse is basically Jesus, and the government tells you not to stare at it because the cabal wants you to turn your back on Jesus and reject him. The government doesn't want you to look because they don't want you to know the truth. So the Q people are planning to stare directly into the eclipse. Besides, Trump did it, so how bad could it be? Keep in mind, even Trump didn't sit there and just stare at a solar eclipse for minutes on end. He just kind of glanced at it. Twice, but still. So does QAnon have anything to do with the Protect Children Q LLC? Who's to say? But honestly, it seems like QAnon has enough on their plate right now to be worried about billboards. Anyway, I've got my eclipse glasses and I hope you do too. All right, that's it for me. If you got anything out of this, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and check out my podcast, Modern Context. Thanks.